Welcome to Tech Houblon, the podcast that explores information technology and our passion for beer. I'm your host, Luc Dumoulin, and in this episode recorded at Ben's Bar, we dive into the exciting world of information technology, from the latest news and trends to expert opinions. We cover it all, not to mention our beer recommendations. Whether you're a fan of technology, good beer, or a curious listener, there's always something new to learn on each episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Tech and Houblon. Today, we're diving into data sovereignty and its crucial importance for Quebec and Canadian businesses. I'm Luc Dumoulin, your host, and as always, we blend IT expertise with friendly conversation over a good beer. For this episode, I'm pleased to welcome Tamara Vandersluis, one of three founding members of R2I. Hello, Tamara, and thank you for joining our listeners.
Hi, Luc. Thanks for having me today.
Well, as a starter, let me ask you, what beer are you having?
I'll open it first.
Ah.
For real. I'm having Citadin. It's a beer that comes from a microbrewery called Cinquième Baron, which refers to the fifth Baron who actually founded Aylmer in Gatineau, Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my nephew that is one of the owners of this microbrewery. And I absolutely love his beer, and they've won lots of prizes. So highly recommend any of the beers from Cinquième Baron. I chose Citadin because I really like, it's a Pilsner. It's a Czech, based on a Czech base. It's low in percentages. So I find that I like to drink low in percentages so I can drink more.
Well, people that have been following us through the different podcasts know that I'm a Guinness drinker, and I'll stick to it for today. And now, Tamara, for those who haven't had the opportunity to hear from you, can you briefly tell us who you are and what led you into the creation of R2I with the other founding members?
Thanks, Luc. My title is VP of Innovation, but I do, like any company, do all kind of different roles. I spend about half of my time billing customers because my passion is to be close to the customers and doing work with them. I actually do work in cybersecurity with some customers. With the innovation side, I've done several mandates around innovation building, innovation roadmaps. Why we started R2I? Well, when I was 29 years from IBM, retiring from IBM, I was looking for a new career to start and really was passionate about the idea of starting something from the ground up, building a business partner model, but different than what was already out there. And really the R in R2I stands for resources. It's about the resources, and I really believed in that. So we started this company, Benoit, Fred, myself, and we really built it on the R in the R2I for resources.
That's great. Thanks for that. As I mentioned in the introduction, we're going to talk about data sovereignty and everything surrounding it. Can you explain what's your understanding of what data sovereignty means?
Simply put, I'll start with the definition of what I think is data sovereignty. It's really that the data that's belonging to a Canadian company or a Canadian entity, its data is only subject to the laws and regulations of this country, of Canada, and that the data cannot be accessed by any foreign governments or any other law enforcement agencies outside of this country. So I kind of see it as two parts. It's the control, the access to the data, like no other foreign countries can come in, and it's governed by the laws in Canada and only the laws that are applied in Canada or in the province.
And can you tell me why it has become such an important topic in Canada in recent years?
Well, I really see this as kind of three things that are unfolding. The first one is a changing political environment that we've seen recently over, since the early 2025. The second one is the fact that I'd say well over 80% of Canadian businesses rely on foreign-owned cloud providers today, and primarily the United States for their cloud services. And the third piece to this is really the existence of foreign laws now that can, in fact, govern and access data that resides in Canada. So if held by U.S. companies, such as most of the common hyperscalers today, they actually do have an arm that can come into Canada and access the data. So I see it as a threefold. It's these three, or the perfect storm, if you will, And these two laws that I'm talking about, one is the the Patriot Act. It was brought in 2001 following 9/11. Its focus was really about fighting terrorism, and it gave it the ability to expand surveillance powers. It was mostly focused on data that resides in the U.S., but it gave them the ability to quickly access emails, for example, of bad players, but very quickly without going through court process to get that done. So what changed is in 2018, they started another one called the Cloud Act. I don't know if you know what the Cloud Act stands for, but it stands for Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data, meaning they can go get data elsewhere outside of the U.S. So again, the reason being for these is to predominantly was to expedite finding bad people, and they wouldn't be able to hide their emails in another country, and then the U.S. couldn't get to their emails. So that part makes sense. It allows U.S. law enforcement to compel American companies to provide data stored on servers anywhere in the world. So if that data is stored in Canada, they have access to it if they have the right reasons to go after it. So even if data is physically stored in Canada, U.S.-based cloud providers may be required to hand it over. And the laws suddenly to that data are laws that apply outside of Canada. Laws that apply to U.S. can now come here. So the thing is, like I mentioned, a change in the political environment. We've seen recently fentanyl being declared as a national security risk. This is about national security risk. So something like fentanyl saying, it's a national security risk, suddenly that comes into play and they can come in and get the data. So, that was given enough cause to break all the trade agreements. You just want to be aware of that. I'm not saying it's a high risk, but it's something that people should start to consider. And if you want to be, immune to those kind of issues, you got to start to think about data sovereignty. All this means, we see the political environment changing, and we don't know which way it's going to go. So
True.
Be prepared. So all this means that if you haven't evaluated the impact of your possible lack of data sovereignty today in your organization, I think it's time to have a look at it today.
For sure. Makes sense. Now, how does R2I ensures the sovereignty of its clients' data?
It really is the three things that defines what data sovereignty is. Here, we're 100% Canadian owned. We have our data centers are exclusively in Canada, including all the backups and dark fiber, even the networking that we use between our sites are Canadian only. And we have Canadian-based support teams, so it's 100% Canadian. So it's easy to say this, but more importantly, we're certified by outside providers, and I'll go into that say that we do what we say we do. So if we say we're 100% Canadian, we're in fact audited because we have four externally audited ISO certification. So we have the ISO 27001, which is about information security, and privacy protection, and 27017, which is very specific to the cloud information security, and we have the 27018, protection of personal and confidential data, and now we have the 9001, which is the quality management, which is really about our internal processes. But all to say, we have external auditors that are certified. They come in, and we were surprised to learn they even go through our marketing material, our websites, and say, this is what you say, this is what you do. So they actually verify that everything we say is what we do. So when we say we're 100% Canadian, we say our people are all Canadian based and all our data centers are in Canada, our backups are all in Canada, it's true.
Now, talking about security and data protection, how does data sovereignty influence cybersecurity strategies within Canadian organizations?
Well, cybersecurity is a worldwide issue, and it needs to remain the priority for all businesses. And it's really about preventing outside intrusions or attacks that are in fact illegal. But data sovereignty is about ensuring that foreign entities that are acting within their country's law cannot access your data. It's also an intrusion, but it's not an illegal intrusion, if you will. So they're they're complementary to each other. You need to be looking at both. So cybersecurity is still top of mind, and it's about that illegal access to your data. And then the data sovereignty is, again, access to your data, but in a legal way.
Okay. So what role do encryption, local storage, and legal jurisdiction play in this context?
Well, if the data is managed by an American company and the data is obtained because of the Cloud Act, for example, in theory, they don't manage your encryption key. So if your data, in theory, people are saying, oh, if my data is encrypted, even if the U.S. says hand it over and they don't have my encryption keys, I'm good, basically, because they can't get to the data because they don't have the keys. So just keep in mind where you keep those keys. And if you're keeping them on a SaaS offering, or if you're keeping them out in the cloud, where are they stated? So make sure that those keys are those are probably the one thing you want to ensure 100% sovereignty on those clouds, on your keys, right? So even if they do get access, they can't force you from outside laws to give you, for them to get their encryption. So the encryption, but more importantly, the encryption keys and where they're stored is the important component.
Oh, I see. Now, are you seeing growing distrust towards foreign providers, especially with laws like the U.S. Cloud Act?
Well, yes, since last year, there's been a shift in the political climate, bringing in light the importance of data sovereignty here in Canada. So Canadian companies and governments are looking to migrate to 100% Canadian, options because of the security concerns. And it's we're seeing this kind of thing happening in groceries, if you will. Groceries happening in cloud. They want to buy Canadian, so it's about buying Canadian, and it's about keeping your data secure. But however, the shift to buy Canadian cloud needs to be it needs more thought. It's not like just going to the grocery store, right? So it needs a bit more time. You can't just say, oh, I'm going now to go all Canadian cloud. You're going to need some time to do the migrations, to think it out, to understand your risk. But we are seeing a movement and more customers being aware of the issue of data sovereignty and starting to ask the right questions about data sovereignty.
Well, let's talk about challenges for Canadian businesses. And what would be the main challenges for companies looking to repatriate or localize their data in Canada?
Edwin Edwin, the R2I Cloud, is an infrastructure as a service. So if we're talking infrastructure as a service, it's a pretty straightforward move. It's something that we do, with our eyes closed. We've got many customers every year coming in. I've seen customers bringing in 30, 40 partitions and having maybe 15, 20-minute downtime and running production there, running production on our site, depending on the applications that they're using. So it's pretty seamless. You got to plan it and you got to worry about the contracts that you have right now before you come. But that's something that's pretty straightforward to do. The bigger challenge is around the SaaS offerings, software as a service, because if you're going to change your SaaS provider, you might be changing your application. And if you're changing your application, you change your processes, and that's much bigger planning. But it's to be aware when you're out there looking for SaaS offerings to really see if you can buy Canadian first for the security reasons, if you can really go towards that. A migration from your current application, totally possible, but that's not an easy feat. The infrastructure as a service, if you're today using infrastructure and a service in one of the hyperscalers, that's an easy move, just depends on your contracts, to come over to an all-Canadian provider like Edwin.
No, I see. Okay. And do you think that SMBs and large enterprises are facing these challenges in the same way?
I guess it kind of depends, but the larger companies are likely to have employees or offices in other countries. So if they're already there and they already have communications and data residing there, it's probably a little less straightforward, but they need to be aware of their assets and which ones might be under some of these constraints. But for them moving to an IaaS, if it's a large company or a government, you can move to an IaaS offering all the same relatively easily. For smaller companies that have all their employees and all of their offices in Canada, you have less of those kind of satellite offices to worry about when you do your migration.
I see. Okay. And do you think, in your opinion, that IT decision makers are sufficiently aware of the issues surrounding data sovereignty?
IT decision makers have a lot in their minds these days. A lot. cybersecurity. They're likely aware of the possible impacts, but they're simply too overwhelmed really with their day-to-day work, in my opinion, to sit down and really spend the time required to understand what the different issues are. The changing political environment, though, is bringing this issue to the top of the pile. And it's during the evaluating and planning phases, I personally think is that where you start to go, oh, like you might, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. You might understand this concept, as a whole, but as you go down, you start to see the picture a little bit better. So, I think they are aware of it, sufficiently aware, maybe not, but the political situation has changed more recently, and they've already had their agendas full since the beginning of the year. So I think we'll start to see a change in this area. And I think the change in the political is likely not going to improve as well, right? It's not likely to improve in the next 2-3 months.
For sure.
We're not sure how long that's going to last. So quite frankly, we need to stop I call it giving the keys away of our kingdom, right? To other countries. And we want to be capable and really build this in-house in Canada and minimize any risk related to kind of what's going on. So you need to evaluate. I believe you need to evaluate your current exposure to the outside laws and regulations with respect to the data. And as we know, the data is your crown jewels, right?
Absolutely. Yes, it's one of your biggest assets. Now, you mentioned it a bit. It's not going to last 2 or 3 months. It's going to last for a longer period of time. So how do you see Canadian sovereign cloud ecosystem evolving? Is there a strong will to build a competitive alternative?
Across Canada, the competitors, yes, the answer is yes. I think it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge market. That's the short answer. And when I talk about like our experience for Edwin, our biggest competitors have been the hyperscalers that we see across Canada, and we compete very well across with no problem. We're very, very price competitive. People like the fact that we have bilingual support, and that we're all local and secure. So we don't have a problem competing, if you will, with the large ones. So I just don't see that there's going to be 100 new all Canadian cloud providers, because quite frankly, we've been in business for 11 years. It's quite a feat to build it. And we've already built it. So I think companies like Edwin that are like clouds like Edwin that are ready to go, I think we're really, really going to be able to grow. We've got the whole foundation based on all the ISO certifications, so we're ready to go. It's not a small feat to build 4 data centers and have private communication networks between the sites, and to build our support structure that we have. So it's taken us 11 years to build this to where we are now. So I don't think you're going to see them popping up all over the place, but I think the ones that are there are going to do very, very well because of the current political situation.
I see. Interesting. Now, as we're approaching the end of this podcast, maybe you'd like to share a few final thoughts or even conclude on what kind of message you'd like to share with companies that haven't yet considered their data sovereignty strategies. And for those looking to take the first step, what should they begin with?
Well, it's something I alluded to before, and I really think it's about taking an inventory of your data today, understanding the risks, understand for this data set, where does it reside, evaluate what possible legal reaches other countries may have on your data, depending if you're in a SaaS, if you're in a hyperscaler, there will be some reaches, where are those SaaS offerings housed? Are they out of the US and, out of, England or Germany? What are those states that might have access to your data? Evaluate the impact and risk associated, because you might say, okay, I'm not too bothered, or is this really my crown jewel and I really, really care? So you might kind of spend a little more time on some data sets than others, making sure that they're in full data sovereignty. You need to understand your company's stand as well. Like, what is the company's stand as a whole on buying Canadian? So if your company says, it's not something that's part of their values, so maybe it's a little less important, but you still need to be aware of the first point, which is about the risk related. But if you have a stand on, I want to grow Canadian companies, that plays into this as well. Like, you want to be able to articulate what your stand is. and understand that you're not alone in this. Like, there's a lot of Canadian companies asking these questions. So, ask other colleagues, ask other Canadian companies, what are they doing about the data sovereignty? So ask the questions. It's fairly new that the political situation changed in the way we didn't expect it would at the speed that it did. So I think it's becoming top of mind. So the goal, of my opinion, is really to obtain data sovereignty and to understand your current exposures.
And to the IT leaders of those organizations, if they don't know how to start this whole process, can they turn around and ask R2I to give them a hand?
Well, for sure, they can ask R2I. It's something that we work on, and as a cloud provider. But as you know about R2I, or most people do, we have Edwin, the cloud. We also sell infrastructure on-prem. So you can sort of go which way you want. If you're saying, no, I want to build my kingdom and I want to run it myself, we can help you with that. So we have expertise in both. We have customers that are doing both. We have customers running production with us and maybe having their, HA machines in their place, or vice versa, or we can just run the backups. But it's something we've seen a lot of experience in, because we're bringing in, I would say we're probably seeing a new client every month. So we've seen all kind of clients, and we can help them through the journey, and all kind of clients and all kind of methods. Like I said, it'd be partial move, or we sell on-prem and we manage it for them. So we kind of do the full gamut. So they can come and see us, absolutely. And like myself, like I mentioned, I spend half my time billing, and that's where I think our value is in our resources. Back to the R, it's being a resource. So I've spent a lot of time in the federal government doing mandates for them, which have been just so exciting type of mandates and innovation. And I do what with regular. I've been working with one client probably the last 5 or 6 years, specifically in cybersecurity, and I work with them, every week that I'm on the phone with them. So you could ask. We've got a team. So yes, we could help. And a company like we're a member of AQT. And there's a lot of Quebec business owners that are there, and that's a great place as well to go and ask for advice.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Tech Houblon, and we got a wealth of information. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us. And to you, our loyal listeners, thank you for tuning in, and stay alert for our upcoming podcast, where we'll explore other topics from the world of information technology.
Thanks, Luc.